Hi guys, welcome back to Nixie DIY Crafts. Today we're going to be making this Halloween wreath. All the supplies used were from the Dollar Tree. You'll need a square frame, an owl shape, some tube mesh, some mesh rolls, some pipe cleaners, and optional, some ornaments. Step 1 is to cut your mesh. I'm using 3 different colors. The colors that I selected match with the owl that I selected for my wreath. The black and orange mesh I had purchased at the Dollar Tree. The purple mesh that you see to the right I had from previous years, purchased at Michael's. That mesh measures 12 inches, but I do end up cutting it down to 6 inches to coordinate with the rest of my Dollar Tree materials. So here I'm using the cereal box and I'm wrapping the mesh around it, and then I'm going to take my fabric wheel cutter to cut on top, and then I'll flip it over and I'll cut underneath. Now I am cutting into the cereal box, but my cereal box is on top of a self-healing mat. That way it protects my workspace. Be very careful when using these rollers. You end up with 2 bunches of your first color that measures 6 by 8. Later on, I do this side to cut those orange pieces down further, and I end up cutting them down to 4 inches by 6. I just take all the pieces and I trim them down in half. Now here I'm repeating my steps using the black mesh, wrapping it around the cereal box, and then I will trim it the same exact way, cutting on top of the box, flipping over the box, and trimming it again. The black mesh, I do leave the measurement that comes out 6 by 8, but the orange ones, I do trim them down to 4 by 6. Now I'm going to cut the purple mesh. The purple mesh does measure 12 inches. I'm going to wrap it around the box, but I'm going to wrap it around the shorter side of the box. I'm going to use a binder clip just to help me hold that in place. Here you'll see that I'm wrapping it around multiple times, and then I'm going to cut it the same exact way using my wheel trimmer. This wreath DIY was inspired by another YouTuber. Her name is Losing It with Jen. The difference is Jen used all tubing and I'm incorporating the mesh with the tubing. I will have her information down below. Her wreath came out super cute. Plus she also used a round form, which I didn't have in stock. So I just used whatever materials I had to recreate this. Now we're going to cut our tube mesh. So I'm using 3 different colors, the green, the orange, and the purple, and I used 1 pack of each, again purchased at Dollar Tree. So I'm cutting these strips down to 28 inches. So I cut 1 at 28 inches and I use the same one as a template to cut the rest of the tubing. You are going to repeat these steps until you completed cutting all 3 colors. Now I'm going to cut my pipe cleaners in half. These pipe cleaners were also purchased at the Dollar Tree. They are very thin, but they do work for these type of projects. So here I'm just taking a bunch and I'm going to fold them in half, and using regular scissors, I will trim them in half. To make our bundles, I'm taking 1 of each color of the tubing and I'm going to place it on top of my black mesh. I'm sorry that I'm off camera here. I'm using a pipe cleaner to close it, and I'm closing it on the back side. The back side for me is where I've attached the black mesh. I did cut 3 different colors of mesh, but I decided to only use the black mesh to attach to the tubing. I felt that the black made the tubing colors pop more. In a little bit, I'll show you what to do with the orange and the purple mesh. I love using this mesh because you'll see here that it just naturally curls, so it already looks pretty when you cut it. So again, you're going to repeat these steps until you have completed all of your bundles, which is when you run out of your materials. I did use 1 entire roll of the black mesh. Before I show you how to make the purple and orange bundles, I just wanted to point out that I did decide to trim down my 12-inch purples into 6-inch, and I decided to trim down the 10-inch orange strips to 5 inches. So now let's get started making our bundles. To create these bundles, I'm starting off with the purple, scrunching it up, curling up the orange one and placing it on top of the purple in a form of an X. Then I take a pipe cleaner and I secure it on the back. You're going to continue this step until you have completed creating all of your bundles. I used one entire roll of the orange mesh. So as soon as you run out of the orange mesh, you know you have enough material to cover your wreath. Now let's figure out where our owl placement will be. So I take my owl and I'm going to place it on the right hand side of my frame. That way I know where to start adding my bundles and where to stop. The easiest way to add your bundles are to flip your wreath form upside down, place the bundles underneath so you can secure from above. So I'm starting on the bottom right hand corner, as you can see here. Now I decided to start with the tubing, and I originally started attaching it to the bottom 2 wires, and then as I went along I decided to just attach it to the middle wire. It really isn't necessary to attach it to the bottom 2, because once you continue to add these bundles to your wreath, the ending results, you will not be able to see the wire frame. My original idea was to attach all of these bundles with the tubing to cover my entire wreath form, but I quickly realized that I didn't have enough, and I didn't want to run to the store to buy more. I wanted to use the materials that I had on hand, so that's when I decided to incorporate the purple and the orange bundles in between. So here you'll see that I'm just filling those in. So now my wreath form will be alternating. It will be the tube bundles and then just the mesh tube bundles and then just the mesh, and I continue this process until I have completely covered the 3 sides of my wreath form. While working, I occasionally flip over my wreath form so I can look for any empty slots and continue to shift around the bundles and continue to add new bundles to the wreath form. And you are just going to continue this process until you have completely covered all of the sections that you need to cover, and then we're going to move on to adding our owl to our wreath form. Now for the next step, I'm going to add pipe cleaners to the back of my owl so I can attach it to my wreath. I'm using pipe cleaners, some cardstock, and hot glue. I do recommend that you protect your fingers with the silicone fingers. Here you'll see that I added a blob of glue. I placed the pipe cleaner and I used the cardboard to press the pipe cleaner into the glue so it's secure in place. Before I add my owl to my wreath, I'm going to add my hanger, which I'm using a jute rope. And what you see me doing here is just making a double knot. You're going to feed the rope through the middle wire of your wreath, and then you're going to tuck it into each other, pulling it up and leaving just that hanging piece exposed. Now let's attach my owl. I'm using an owl because I'm gifting this wreath to my daughter's kindergarten teacher, so I thought the owl was not so scary, if you know what I mean. So here you'll see that I am just moving the mesh bundles away from the owl because I want the owl to lay flat against the wreath form. And here I'm just securing it in place using those pipe cleaners that I had previously attached. But please feel free to select whatever artwork you like from the Dollar Tree, of course. It's $1, so I recommend always shopping from there. And as long as you buy the mesh and the tubing that coordinates with your art, you will be fine. Now this next step is optional, but I'm adding 3 of these Christmas ornaments that I've had for over 10 years. I actually pulled them out of my donation pile and decided to add them to my Halloween wreaths. And I'm just adding a total of 3 of them, 1 on each side. And to attach these, make sure that you add a big blob of hot glue and then just stuff it right into the mesh and it would stick. And that is it. We have completed our wreath. I hope you were inspired by this. Again, I will link Jen's channel below. Thank you for joining me. Bye.